Believe it or not, it has been 3 months of ownership with a Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo, and it has been illustrious so far. Because this isn't my first Volkswagen Tiguan, for those of you who are new here. I picked one up back in December, and this was meant to be my year-long tester for the channel. Well, 3 weeks in, and not even a full 1,000 miles on the odometer, a check engine light and limp mode pop up. I go to my Volkswagen dealership, they tell me I need a new turbo. Well, now we know in the end of March, heading into April, it's a software issue. And a lot of SEL R-Line turbos are dealing with this same problem, but thankfully, there is a software update coming at the end of April, which should fix all of this. Well, long story short, at the end of January, I picked up my second Volkswagen Tiguan. My dealership bought me out of my first one and placed me into the second one where I can continue on with my year-long journey. And 3,000 miles in combined with my first and second Volkswagen Tiguans, it is all the same here. Everything is the exact same. So I feel pretty confident as to how I feel about this crossover and why it might be a great daily driver. And on the other hand, you might want to steer clear of it. So in today's video, we're going to go over what I have learned 3 months in owning this vehicle, driving it, and living with it on a daily basis, and to see if this crossover has lived up to my expectations or has fallen short in many regards. So if you're ready, then I'm ready. Let's dive right into this video. So let's start off with what's good here out of the 2026 Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo. And it begins with the interior comfort. Maybe even ends with the interior comfort. You have leather trim seats that is pretty standard to see at around $45,000, but they're heated, ventilated, and massaging. There is no other crossover in this class under 50 grand that offers this particular feature. That is the standout for the Volkswagen Tiguan. Now, with the Audi Q5, which comes in about $10,000 more, you don't get this feature. You have to go with the SQ5 at around 65 to 70 grand, just to put all that into perspective. And I'd argue, even with the 3-row crossovers out there with massaging seats, Volkswagen's offering the most aggressive. And it really does help after a long day at work. I jokingly call the Volkswagen Tiguan the $45,000 massaging seat because you could literally just sit in this vehicle, not even move it, turn on the massaging seats, and it's relaxing. It's a great experience. It's really the ambiance of the Volkswagen Tiguan that I think elevates this crossover into a different category, into a different conversation entirely. Because when you take a look at what you have here in terms of the amenities, the ambient lighting, the panoramic moonroof, the massaging seats, the full digital gauge cluster, the 3-level heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, you have a vehicle that has this presentation of like a 4-star restaurant. It really has this nice presentation that makes it feel luxurious and upscale. You also have wood grain trim on the dashboard too, if that wasn't enough. And this leads me into the fit and finish as well. Because right now in this class, whether it's the new Mazda CX-5, the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, a lot of vehicles are going towards harder touch plastics. They're moving away from quality. They're moving away from the design of the interior and focusing primarily on the technology. Whereas with Volkswagen, and I wouldn't have said this before, a couple of months ago, I think right now Volkswagen is leading in terms of interior quality. So sure, you're not going to have the softest touch materials on the dashboard, although it is somewhat soft touch. It's not hard plastic, which I really like. But then you also have the soft touch materials on the door panels, on the dashboard beneath the head unit. You also have padding along the center console, which we don't see in the new Mazda CX-5. You pair that with the leather trim seats, and you feel as though you're in a luxury crossover. In some ways, this vehicle almost feels like it's 60 or 70 grand. You feel like you're getting away with something. It's most certainly a steal in this class. There's also the smaller details to all of this too, where you do have the adjustable center armrest. You have the dial to control your volume. You have the ability to easily scroll through different drive modes. In some ways, this vehicle is somewhat ergonomic, even with the lack of physical buttons and dials on the dashboard and on the center console. While some people are going to be taken aback by all of this, you do get acclimated pretty quickly, and even better, on the steering wheel, they got rid of the haptic feedback buttons from last generation. So it is somewhat analog, even though you feel as though you're in a 21st century vehicle that might be even too futuristic in some ways. But Volkswagen has done enough where after a 3-month period of time of ownership, you almost get used to this on a daily basis. This upscale persona translates to the on-road driving experience. Before you even set off, the first thing you got to know here is that with the SEL R-Line Turbo, it has insulated glass. So you really don't hear a lot of the outside world. Even with the 20-inch alloy wheels, it's a very quiet, almost therapeutic driving environment that really sets this model apart from a lot of its rivals. Now, you're building off of the fact you don't have a plastic interior. You're building off of the leather trim seats, the massaging seats. So you're already in this relaxed state. But the fact that this vehicle is so quiet with the Turbo 4, with the insulated glass, this is one of the most isolating vehicles you can drive right now under 50 grand. Built on Volkswagen's updated MQB Evo platform, for one, this generation is smaller than the outgoing generation. So it feels a bit more agile. There's a bit more maneuverability here. It's not top heavy. And while a lot of people like the second generation Tiguan when it pertained to the handling, the boxier shape, the lack of power held that crossover back. It was a large family hauler, but that was basically it. The German engineering was pretty much wasted. It was wasted for this vehicle in the US because we didn't get an R version. We didn't get 300 horsepower out of the Tiguan. For 2026 with the SEL R-Line Turbo, you now have a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that is capable of getting you up to speed quickly while also providing some engagement here. 268 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. I really don't like this 8-speed automatic, and we'll come back to that later on in this video. But you have a crossover on paper that is more capable and equipped to be a class leader when it comes to the driving experience and being engaging, not just a point A to point B vehicle. This crossover most certainly benefits from German engineering. The precise handling, the precise steering input is all a standout. However, some of this will come back to bite you when you're driving around the city and suburbs. But the point I'm trying to make here with this Volkswagen Tiguan is that it successfully places itself between the mainstream and luxury segments, which we really haven't seen much in this class over the last 5 to 10 years. And now with brands going cheaper, moving away from great driving characteristics, moving away from the fit and finish, the Volkswagen Tiguan elevates itself almost immediately to the top of this class in that regard. And it's because of that, I look at the Volkswagen Tiguan not only as being unique in this market, but also when it pertains to being a driver's crossover, a driver's vehicle, it succeeds in that. And also, I would argue, excels more than any other crossover in this class, when a couple of years ago, we would say these same things about the Mazda CX-5 and also, of course, the Mazda CX-50. Moving on to what is bad out of the SEL R-Line Turbo, we return to the interior. And we're going to start off with what's minor and then work our way up to the top to the major issues that's plaguing this crossover, at least for the first model year. Things that I think Volkswagen will address with some software updates, but some of these things might be with us for the entire duration of this generation. So let's talk about them. The first thing I don't like, or the minor issues I can live with, is going to be this infotainment system. I don't mind the lack of physical buttons and dials. It is what it is. This is the direction the automotive industry is going in. It is no point in crying over spilt milk. But the software itself I don't like. So yes, I'm usually using Apple CarPlay, so I rarely get into Volkswagen's apps or Volkswagen software. But when I do, it's a bit confusing. And for those of you who are not acclimated with this type of infotainment system, you'll be spending 20, 30, 40 minutes getting used to everything, finding the menus, the sub-menus, and then even features that were not listed in the press release. Things that you didn't even know about this vehicle, such as your heated and ventilated seats, right? So you press down on the seat icon, you have your massaging seats there, but then press down on settings. And with the settings tab, now you have another menu for seat climate controls, and I love this. So you press down on that, and now you can adjust where the heat and the coolness for these seats is going to be displayed, or where it's going to be distributed, I should say. So you can have all the heat for your back, which pairing that up with the massaging seats, that's pretty nice, but also you can have all that heat on your butt. And so many vehicles in this class don't give you that type of functionality or customizability. So it's these smaller details too that I had just discovered, I think, about a month or two after I bought the vehicle. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I can actually adjust that too. But then also with the widgets itself, you have your telephone, your radio, your vehicle, your assist systems, your settings, your off-road. All of this, I wish was trimmed down. I wish it was simplified, because this is just overkill for a crossover in this class. And that's where having all these features comes back to bite you. So I really want to dive into the vehicle tab though, because this one, it has features I think is most certainly going to be necessary for you. They don't need to have all these graphics here to make it functional. So you have the Tiguan slide into screen here, and now you have your exterior lights, your tires, your headlights, your mirrors. You can turn on the dynamic cornering lights. But then you also have the interior for the head-up display, the cockpit, interior lights, the seats. But for the exterior itself, you can have a 360-degree view of your Tiguan, and now you have more menus. When you get out of that tab, here you have your assist systems. And with the assist systems, now you have even more to work with. For the image view, thankfully they give you a list here where you can just turn on or off all your safety systems. I do like that, but some vehicles allow you to do all of this with a digital gauge cluster. So I kind of wish that Volkswagen would move in that way rather than giving us this screen that almost feels like a computer or tablet. Also, then you have your settings icon for your system settings, your network settings, your info. We see this a lot in vehicles, but still though, I feel like this could be simplified and not given this in-depth nature that not even Audi offers. But this is also where, for Volkswagen more specifically, not utilizing Android-based software is kind of a detriment, is kind of a negative. Because if you own currently a Chevrolet Equinox, a Ford Escape, a Ford Bronco Sport, and you bypass the Volkswagen Tiguan and go straight to a Mazda CX-5, a brand new CX-5, you're going to have basically the exact same layout. The Android-based software carries over from one brand to another, and there's no learning curve whatsoever. There's just some minor things, some minor tweaks that makes Mazda's infotainment system a bit more unique, but that's basically it. It's not like you're sitting there like, wow, I'd never used this screen before. Whereas with Volkswagen, it's a whole new world that you need to experience and get used to. And that is one thing I wish Volkswagen would address in future model years. Change up this infotainment system. That is the one thing tech-wise I don't like here out of this Volkswagen Tiguan. Then I can't forget about the tech glitches, the numerous tech glitches here that it's something new every week, it almost seems like. So again, we're going to start off with the minor things, work our way up to the top. Your wireless phone charging pad sometimes doesn't work. Your wireless phone connectivity sometimes doesn't work. There'll be that rare occasion where the infotainment screen, you no longer have access to the screen itself. The touchscreen freezes. The big one for me, and it's happened twice, is that the camera systems black out when you're in reverse. However, all these issues that I would complain about self-heal itself. All you need to do is park the vehicle, turn it off, hop outside, hop back in, and everything's working just fine. It's as if nothing's the matter. Then we get to the bigger things. You have check engine lights, you have warning lights, you have limp mode. And this typically happens in colder weather, so I have not experienced any of that since the spring, so I've been very happy here. But you will get some error messages pertaining to the SOS, your front safety systems. Sometimes it'll go even further than that, where you're going to have more codes for your driver system error, the limp mode. It just doesn't stop. And then there's also going to be times, and I call this the pseudo limp mode or safe mode out of the SEL R-Line Turbo, where it holds itself back a bit, where sometimes when you don't have the wireless phone charging pad working, it senses that and you don't get the max power out of this turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It's almost in a limp mode without being limited to 4,000 RPM. You're also going to notice that the vehicle doesn't drive right when it's in this safe mode or pseudo limp mode. And it's those times that's a bit more infuriating. It's those times that I have documented where I'm like, this crossover isn't driving right, it doesn't feel right, it's having one of those symptoms. And I would argue this vehicle is temperamental. This technology and software is temperamental. And it's not just a technology that I would say is temperamental. It depends on the day, really, with this vehicle, how it's going to perform, how it feels, and also situations that you throw this vehicle in, such as the temperature. Anything below 32 degrees, you can expect problems. And it's not just with the technology, it's not just with the sensors and the check engine lights, it's also mechanical as well. What makes this crossover borderline frustrating and infuriating to own and drive on a daily basis is two components: the suspension and the transmission. And I really can't stand this 8-speed automatic. It is the bane of my existence. It is the Achilles heel of this crossover mechanically. Now, software-wise, I think the check engine lights and the limp modes is the bigger issue here. But mechanically, this transmission, I just can't stand. But with the suspension first and foremost, I have no idea how it's possible that you can design and engineer a crossover that feels so luxurious on the highway and on winding back roads where it almost feels like an Audi Q5, where you question why are there people out there spending $55,000 or $60,000 on a compact crossover when you get it all here with the Volkswagen Tiguan, with the massaging seats and the ambient lighting. Well, that question gets answered when you go into the city and the suburbs, where there's bumps and imperfections. Because wow, does this suspension feel so unrefined. It's like driving a $25,000 subcompact crossover. You go from driving a vehicle that feels like an Audi Q5 to driving a crossover that feels like a larger equivalent to a Chevrolet Trax. I don't understand how it's possible, and yet it is. When you're in stop-and-go traffic or cruising around at around 20 to 25 miles an hour, and you encounter potholes, you encounter bumps and imperfections, you feel it. It's like driving a Volkswagen GTI with a sports-tuned suspension. And that's where this crossover takes a major step back, where we can inflate this vehicle's ego. We can inflate our own egos thinking, wow, we got a bargain. And then you realize that this crossover desperately needs an adaptive suspension. It needs air suspension, so that way when you are in the city or on the highway, you can adjust those driving modes, you can adjust the suspension modes, and make this vehicle, I think, adapt to a number of different driving situations. But by demanding that, now you're looking at a vehicle that is the Audi Q5, because the Audi Q5 has the adaptive suspension. So you're in some ways in this middle ground where you're not getting a vehicle that's a mainstream crossover, but you're not getting a luxury vehicle either. And that's where I think the Volkswagen Tiguan falls a bit short, that there might be crossovers out there that are smoother to drive, that can handle city situations. Mostly the Mazda CX-5, the last generation CX-5. The new generation, I really don't like what they've done to the driving characteristics. But this then leads me into the transmission. And this one really bothers me, truly, because you have a crossover with 268 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, German engineering backing up this platform, and you give it one of the worst transmissions I have ever experienced in this class. People can complain about the 6-speed automatic in the Mazda CX-50 and CX-5, but you have never experienced the 8-speed in this Volkswagen Tiguan in a number of different situations. Because it doesn't matter whether you're on the highway or in the city, this 8-speed automatic is going to be unrefined. It is not going to be smooth. I'm not going to call it clunky because it's not a dual clutch, but it's indecisive with its gear shifts. It's constantly gear hunting in certain situations. And then also, it's lethargic. So when you are on throttle, it's like, oh, you want to be in third gear? You want to be in fourth gear? Let's do it. Let's get to third gear. Let's get to fourth gear. And it's the same way with the downshifts. And initially, I thought all this was related to the cold weather. We had a very cold winter up here in Boston. And during the winter months, this vehicle does not like that cold weather. Whatever is software related does not like those temperatures. And it's immediately noticeable that this transmission is clunky or it jolts when it is cold. But as I'm experiencing today at 73-degree weather, it's not temperature related. It's something wrong with this 8-speed automatic. And again, I don't know if it's gearing. I don't know if it's software related. It's just not smooth, and it doesn't pair up with this vehicle whatsoever. And it's those times where it's like, I wish we had a 7-speed dual clutch. But then I look at that feature again, and it's like, that is going to be found in an Audi Q5. That's going to be found in an Audi Q3. It's one of those situations where it's like, if you want a smoother driving experience, you have to pay a little extra. So it's a matter of you get what you pay for, like I said earlier. Now, one thing to remedy this jolt with the second gear into third gear is easing onto the throttle. But it's just that lag. It's that lethargic feel that it's like this crossover is 90 years old. And when you look at what you have on paper, this should be like a more youthful crossover to drive. It shouldn't feel this matured in that way, and yet it does. And I think that, to me, is what bothers me the most when it pertains to the driving experience, when it pertains to the issues that are mechanical. Software, we have to wait and see what Volkswagen does. Mechanical, though, this is just dropping the ball, in my opinion. Now, I also have some mixed feelings here about the Volkswagen Tiguan. Neither good nor bad, but things to consider here out of this crossover. One is going to be the fuel efficiency here, because with the Tiguan, you have right around 22 miles per gallon in the city, 29 miles per gallon on the highway. But if you do primarily drive in the city, you could see as low as 17.5 miles per gallon. That's what I saw a couple of times driving in the city, so not very fuel efficient. On the highway, though, if you're cruising along, even on a back road, believe it or not, you can get close to 30 miles per gallon. So on a longer road trip, you could easily do above 400 miles on a full tank. So that is pretty good here out of a crossover with a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and the fact that it's not hybrid. You have about a 14-gallon tank. So it is a thirsty car. Best of all, though, you can fill up with regular fuel, so you don't have to spend $5 a gallon here. So that's one thing I have liked out of the Volkswagen Tiguan. Another thing I'm a bit mixed here on the Volkswagen Tiguan is the overall performance. And I know some people are going to say, well, Mike, you should have purchased the Porsche Macan or Audi Q5, before even hearing me out. Because yes, I do like the performance, I like the straight line speed, I like the handling. However, it comes back to the cons here with the 8-speed automatic and, of course, the suspension. At times, this crossover feels like a B9.5 Audi Q5. It really does. There are drives where it's like, this is pleasant, this is phenomenal. And then you get in the city, or you have certain situations, and it's like, is there anything better out there? And it's that back and forth that's made the last few months very interesting here with this platform, with this generation, because it's a love-hate relationship, and in some ways, this crossover could just be nicknamed Jekyll and Hyde, because you don't know what you're going to expect, you don't know what you're going to get in certain situations. And I just wish this crossover was a bit more consistent, and it does make me question, what else out there could I have purchased that would have been a better choice at around $45,000? And that leads me into the alternatives. And to me, this is where I can't stand the compact crossover segment in general right now in 2026. The Mazda CX-5, there's no turbo, so you don't get any performance. What they did the interior is an abomination by going away from the soft touch materials. It's not the same crossover you and I both love. You are forced to go with the Mazda CX-50, more on that in a minute. Then with the Toyota RAV4, another vehicle I had high expectations for. I haven't done a proper review yet on the channel, but I have driven one. And I gotta say, it is not worth the price tag. Not with the hybrid trims, at least. Maybe the plug-in hybrid might be a bit different. But at $45,000 or $48,000 on the high end out of the RAV4, absolutely not. So what is your alternative? What do you do then? You have to go backwards. You have to go to vehicles that were made either a couple of years ago or older platforms. And at least for a brand new vehicle you can buy right now today at around $42,000 to $45,000 is the CX-50, which has its own quirks. It has its own downsides. People don't like the stiff suspension. They don't like the plastic cladding. So what do you do then? Well, you then look at maybe a used Audi Q5 or a used Porsche Macan. But then you're paying a premium when it pertains to the maintenance. So there really isn't a great alternative here. There is no plan B. There's no other option that pulls into frame, and you can look at it and say, that's exactly what I want, and I'm not making any compromises. So ultimately, you're forced to live with the imperfections. You're forced to live with the software glitches. And with that, you get a crossover that looks great. I mean, it really does look upscale. You also have the interior quality, the technology, and the features. So in that way, when I look at it from that perspective, I don't regret my purchase at all. However, when I look at the pros and cons, here's what I'm going to grade my 3 months and 3,000 miles of ownership so far with this crossover. It's a B. At best a B+, but I'm leaning towards a B. Because the things that holds this crossover back really hurts me. It really bothers me because I feel like right now in the compact crossover segment, Volkswagen dropped the ball. They really did. They had an opportunity to change this segment entirely to be in a class of their own. And when you take a look at the downfalls of this vehicle, the software issues, the 8-speed automatic, it brings this vehicle back down to reality. It is no longer in that top tier. It's no longer untouchable. And instead, it's a mainstream crossover like a Toyota RAV4 or Mazda CX-5. It's just that it looks better, it handles better, and drives better. But the downsides, the negatives, is what's really going to hurt this vehicle in the long run, in my opinion, until Volkswagen gives us those software updates, maybe even changes a few things here with this generation with a mid-cycle refresh. But until then, I'm going to stick with a B for my grade with the 2026 Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo. So guys, thank you so much again for joining me on this ownership update for the Volkswagen Tiguan. Another one will be coming up near the end of June or early July for the 6-month, 6,000 mile interval. But I gotta say, so far, no regrets. It's just that it has come with some headaches and inconveniences along the way, having to give up my first Volkswagen Tiguan back in January to land this one, which so far has been pretty good with the warmer weather, and there really hasn't been many tech issues since February when I first picked it up. But guys, thanks so much again for watching. Take care, and I will see you guys next time.